Now, Eric Young, who returned home to Impact Wrestling at their Slammiversary pay-per-view last weekend, EY is back. He spoke out on Busted Open Radio this past week about his time in WWE and what he sees as WWE's broken system. So I'm going to read to you, it's a little lengthy here, but I think it's important. I want to read to you what he had to say, and then I'll chime in on this. This is what Eric Young said. And I'm borrowing here, hat tip to Pro Wrestling Sheet for the write-up on this. So let me read this to you, and then I'll give you my thoughts. So Eric Young was asked about his time in WWE while speaking with SiriusXM's Busted Open. The former member of Sanity praised his time in NXT and said that he felt he had a part in the creative direction of his character while working with Triple H. Then he talked about how the main roster transition did not go as well. And he talked about how he's not a political person, meaning backstage politics. I don't play politics. It's not what I do. Probably a bit of a hindrance, therefore, to my career that I didn't, but I refuse to be political. And then he talked about how he thinks the WWE system is flawed. And he talked about Vince McMahon, and here's what he had to say. So we don't need to go on and on about it, but the system is broken. It's hard to get a word in even when you're doing nothing. It feels like you're just trying to fix people's mistakes all day. There is no creativity. They want everybody to do things the same and be the same and bump the same and sell the same. And there's millions of rules, which I'm sure you guys have all heard and talked about on the show at length, and people talk about on the internet. The secret rules. Those change daily, and it's really just hard to understand what's going on and why it's going on. The system is flawed, and I would say that to anyone there. I would say it to Vince McMahon himself. I am definitely not the first person that he has made a mistake on, and I won't be the last. I don't think it's anything personal. Anytime me and him were in the same room together or we spoke, he was always respectful. We had 2 pretty decently long conversations in the time I was there, and I thought that they went well, and he understood where I was coming from. But I am a man. I am not going to stand in a hallway for 4 hours to talk to him. I'm just not going to do that. That could be wrong on my part. That could be stubborn on my part, but I'm a 40-year-old man. And I am not going to wait in the hallway like a child to maybe get 5 minutes to talk to him. I said my piece to him, he seemed receptive to it, and nothing ever came from it. I don't take it personally, he made a mistake. And as the leader of the company and the person that decides everything, it is a massive mistake to pass on somebody like me. You have a 3-hour television show and you can't find 5 minutes for Eric Young? Your show is broken. It is as simple as that, and I've proven that I can do whatever, any role. I'm not saying that I can do it. I've already done it, and I've proven that I can do it and do it very well. So for me, it is a huge miss, a huge mistake, and now it is someone else's gain. And then he said, I feel like I didn't exist for 2 years. After being on TV every week for about 15 years and working so hard to build your career, we're all independent contractors. We're all our own business. Then having a person basically take a dump on all of your hard work and discard it like nothing, it's hard to deal with, man. It's a huge blow to the psyche, a huge blow to the ego, but I never thought, oh, this is my fault. The system is just broken. It is flawed. All of the flaws are created by one person, and that's not going to change. So unfortunately, for a lot of people there, a lot of creative people and a lot of really talented people, they're never going to be able to fully do what they can do because of the way the system is organized. It is very sad. It is mostly just sad and super frustrating when you're in it. But now that I can say I can smile because I don't have to deal with that anymore. And the last thing that I thought was very telling, he mentioned that he started to lose his love for pro wrestling while he was working for WWE. And he even stopped watching wrestling altogether. So he was a big wrestling fan. He tried to watch and consume as much as he could. And it was just so beaten out of him that he just lost all passion for it and stopped watching it altogether. But now he says he's back to loving it again. Ever since he got his release, he's like a renewed man. That last part really struck me because How many times have we heard guys, after they've left WWE, talk about how working there killed their passion for pro wrestling? I know this is not the first time I've heard it. We've heard people say this time and time again. Now, could it be sour grapes? Maybe in some cases it is. But we've heard this from multiple people who have either quit on their own or been fired or released from WWE over the years. That working there has killed their passion for the business, and their love and passion has been beaten out of them, slowly beaten out of them. And it shouldn't be that way. The biggest wrestling company in the world. They obviously do a lot of things right. They make a lot of money. But why do so many people come in with such passion and vigor, and they leave so broken and defeated? You know, here's somebody in Eric Young. I think I certainly could have seen him doing a lot more in a comedy role. Kind of, you know, similar to maybe what they're doing, or what they've done in the past, I guess. Not so much recently, but, you know, the role that Drake Maverick was in for a while. Like with AOP and some of the stuff they had him doing. You know, the goofy stuff, 24/7 runs and all that kind of stuff. Could I have seen Eric Young in that kind of role? Absolutely. Absolutely. And I don't know why he wasn't, or very rarely. On occasion, maybe he was, but even stuff like that, they never used him. He was just sitting back there. I could see someone like him who has a lot of pride. You know, he doesn't want to be a charity case. He doesn't want to just be there to collect a paycheck. Oh, wow, they're paying me. That's so nice of them. Like, he wants to work for it. He wants to be on TV. He wants to contribute. He doesn't want to be a charity case. Now, I'll be honest, as far as my thoughts on Eric Young in WWE, I never saw him doing much in WWE. Even before he came in, when I found out they signed him, I was shocked. I didn't think that he would fit into that system, or that he was really going to be like a good fit for WWE. I just never thought that they would do much with him, and there wasn't really much there for him to do. And the idea that in this interview, you know, he's talking about not just how WWE made a mistake by ignoring him and not doing anything and not utilizing him, but that they made some kind of massive, that was the word he used, they made a massive mistake in passing on him. A massive mistake is a massive stretch. WWE did not make a massive mistake by passing on Eric Young. This company has made some massive mistakes before. I assure you, passing on Eric Young was not one of them. It would not even be in the top 25. And maybe that sounds harsh, but guess what? That's just reality. But I do think they could have found something for the guy to do. That I agree with. You certainly could have found something for the guy that you're paying to do. And not everybody is going to get over. Not everybody is going to be super successful. Yeah, I think people sometimes come into this company or any company and they have these great dreams of what their career is going to be like and how it's going to play out. And I'm going to win championships and I'm going to be in main event and I'm going to work my way up the ladder and I have all these great ideas. And it's a rude awakening for a lot of people. That's why I said before, could it be sour grapes when some of these guys talk? In some cases, yes. That's probably part of it. But then there are guys who legitimately don't get an opportunity, who are just completely fucked over. Where they get little chances and they get little mini pushes and then they pull back on them. And it's almost like dangling the carrot in front of them and they go to snatch it away and you keep yanking it away from them. Like, I mean, that's pretty brutal to do that to somebody. It's pretty harsh. So yes, we've seen countless people in that situation before. I mean, I still don't understand what the point was in calling up Sanity when they did from NXT if they had absolutely no plans for them other than we just need guys to job out on TV. Maybe that was legitimately the idea. We need people on TV that could be used in more of an enhancement role. We don't have plans for them so much, but we got plans for these 3, 4, 5 guys, and they need people to beat. So, hey, let's call up Sanity. And, hey, Nikki Cross is pretty good. We'll break her away. We don't want her with these losers. But they never had plans for Killian Dane. They never had plans for Eric Young. They got Nikki Cross. Nikki's in a pretty good spot right now. But Eric Young and Killian Dane, not so much. Killian Dane wound up back in NXT. I'm sure Eric Young wishes that he would have ended up back in NXT. He had nothing but praise for the way that he was used and the environment in NXT. It was only when he got called to the main roster, called down to the main roster, that everything went to shit. How many times have we heard that? How many times have we seen this play out on TV? All of these stories, it sounds like Vince McMahon has the attention span of a goldfish. Eric Young is right about one thing. The flaws in the system were created by one person. And that isn't going to change. So that's just the way it's going to be. So long as that person is still the one overseeing that system, this is something that's going to repeat itself over and over and over and over again. And I laugh. You know, there was an item this week, and I think it was from Fightful, so I'll credit Fightful for it, but this item that Vince McMahon is now telling people, well, he's acknowledging behind the scenes, well, we've got to create new stars. It's time to create new stars. Really? He has finally had his coming to Jesus moment. He has come to the realization that they have to create new stars, which is what Paul Heyman told him, and what Heyman, I guess, had started to try to do on Monday Night Raw. He told everybody it would take 18 months. You know, whatever the reasons were, he ended up being fired. Maybe he just wasn't well liked by some of the... We know a few wrestlers who didn't like him. Maybe there were other wrestlers who didn't like Paul Heyman. And they spoke up, and there was an unhappy locker room, and for the sake of keeping a prosperous locker room, Vince McMahon says he's got to go. Maybe it was something like that, or maybe he was a scapegoat for the falling ratings. Who knows ultimately what the true reason was that Paul Heyman got fired, but he got fired. In that role, you know, he's still Brock Lesnar's advocate. Who knows when we'll even see Brock Lesnar back on TV. Heyman will be there with him. But in that role on Raw, he was fired. But that was one of his goals that he had started working towards, was we got to create new stars. So we heard stories that, you know, we're seeing Aleister Black, and we're seeing Apollo Crews, and we're seeing the Street Profits. And the Street Profits have nothing but great things to say. And I think them and Apollo Crews have credited Paul Heyman with kind of pointing their careers in the right direction. So we were starting to see the beginnings of that, but it was going to be a long process because they have neglected doing this for so long. It is coming back to bite them on the ass. Because now you've got these aging stars that aren't going to be able to be on TV as often. Then the pandemic hits, and who could have predicted that? But the pandemic hits, and now you don't have access to some of these stars. And then Becky Lynch gets pregnant. But, you know, Sami Zayn is sitting out. Roman Reigns is sitting out. You know, biggest star in the company. Good for him. Looking out for himself. You got to put your own family, right, and your own health over the company. So you've got people injured. You've got people sitting out. You've got people pregnant. Oh, we've got to create new stars. No shit. All of a sudden, Vince McMahon has his eureka moment. We have to create new stars. You want to know how sad and pathetic the state of these big new stars are in WWE? And how awful a job they've really done at getting behind some of these people? And this on its own is not a big deal, but there was a press release that was put out this week. It illustrates a larger problem, which is why I kind of tie this into this. You may have heard about this World of Tanks deal that WWE signed. They put a press release out. World of Tanks it's a video game. It's a console game. It might be for mobile, but it's a console game as well. And I think this only applies to the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox version of the game. But they're adding WWE-themed tanks, I guess. And the new update allows players to use tanks for Becky Lynch, The Undertaker, Andre the Giant, Sergeant Slaughter, and Stone Cold Steve Austin. None of whom are even active anymore. Then you can also create content using likenesses like Roman Reigns, Macho Man Randy Savage, Rowdy Roddy Piper, Ric Flair, and Shawn Michaels. Again, none of whom are active. And some of whom are dead. Some of whom aren't even breathing. Now, I've heard of things where you might want to... This is the Legends fleet, right? And then you have all the legends and stuff. But, like, these are the WWE stars that are being featured in something like this. I look at the ice cream bars. These new ice cream sandwiches with good humor that came out a number of months ago that they're selling. Look at the 4 wrestlers that you can choose from for their likeness on the cookie on the front. Roman Reigns, Becky Lynch, John Cena, or Randy Savage. Now, yes, at the time, Becky and Roman were still active. Now they're not. But this is a company that is living off of its past. It would be, I'm trying to think, like, again, you have series of toys, or in this case, food branding, but you have in various sports and whatnot, in forms of entertainment, the classics, right? Or the legends, or, WWE, Mattel, they'll put out like a Legends series and stuff. Like, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, and I would hope that the wrestlers, get residuals off all that stuff. But that's not what this is, like the World of Tanks thing, or the ice cream bars, and there may be other things I'm not even thinking of right now. We see this, and we look at who the featured faces are on the front of the package or the poster, and it's the stars of the past. It's the stars that these guys weren't even active, or really their star power goes back 20, 30 years. It would be like the New York Mets starting to put out, various souvenir items in the present day, but they have all old, Mookie Wilson and Mike Piazza and like Tom Seaver, and it's like, well, where are the current players? Oh, there, over there. There's a current player over there. There's Jerry's Familia. He's in the background over there. There's Jacob deGrom. He's peeking his head out in the back row. But like the featured faces are all these players from 25, 30, 35 years ago. They're living off their past. It's no wonder none of the current guys feel as big as some of those stars do. When you've got The Undertaker and Sergeant fucking Slaughter. And again, I don't give a shit about World of Tanks. I'm just using that as one small example of things that we've seen, and it's symptomatic of a larger problem that this company has. Now there's this urgency to create new stars. Are they going to get behind these new stars the way they got behind those guys? Probably not. Maybe for about 3 months. And then they'll change their mind again. And so you end up not making any new stars, or if you're lucky, you'll make 1 or 2 who can sustain themselves. That is not it's like Eric Young said, it's a broken system. In so many different ways, it is a broken system. But this is a company that loves living in the past and living off of its past. And that is one small window into a much larger problem that this company faces. How can we get the stars of today to be the kind of hot commodities that these toy makers and game makers are going to want to use on their posters and their packaging in 5 years? Or not even 5 years. You don't even need to go that far into the future. How can we change that? And I don't know if that's the company putting them out there, or if these other companies are coming to them and saying, hey, we want this guy featured. Boy, I remember Roddy Piper. I remember Hulk Hogan. I remember the Macho Man. I remember Stone Cold and The Rock. Yeah, everybody does. How come people don't talk that way about Randy Orton? How come people don't talk that way about Edge? How come people don't talk that way about, Seth Rollins? What is the difference between then and now? Why is it like that? You gotta ask that question. What was so different about those stars back then as compared to today? Vince McMahon is interested in making new stars until he gets distracted by the next shiny object.